Hello, hi, right. Not very, is that a bit better light? Not very good quality screen in these dark days. In the corner of the room I'm in. Oh, look at that. I thought my washing was out of sight. They're my walking trousers from Monday night. Oh, I got soaking. Right. Let me see my notes. Right then. So this quite an important topic, I think, really, in the context of what we're all doing, and that's dieting mindset. And just it's about recognizing what it is and why it's important to change it, because a lot of us have grown up in a sort of a different environment, I guess, to what we're in today. And a lot of the old beliefs and habits and mindsets that we've accumulated over time around food and dieting don't serve us very well. You know, they don't work just from a straight off. How effective are they? And it can, but they've been narratives that we still can read in the media, and they can be really deeply ingrained. So this is something where I just lay it all out on the table in terms of what my perspective of an old and a negative dieting mindset is, and some of the reasons that we are trying to do together, either in the group or with my support on a one-to-one basis, shift away from that dieting mindset, and how we can do that, because it's not easy, and I just want to say that straight away. But the first stage, I think, of making a change or making a shift is really to look at what a negative dieting mindset actually is, because quite often we just don't notice what we're doing and we don't really think about it. All right. So these are things, not in any particular order, that I see are sort of indicators, I guess, or characteristics is a better word, of what a negative dieting mindset is. And it's really where we're very much governed by various eating rules and restrictions. And usually those rules and restrictions are things that we've made up. We might have accumulated some knowledge or read articles, and then we put sort of a real strong rule in place about something that we should be doing, that we try and live with. And quite often it's hard and it's not necessary. And things like that might be to do with, trying to fast, trying to be having really low calories, trying to ban sugar, trying to ban carbs, trying to be keto, trying to maybe only eat carbs once a day, etc. You know what I'm saying. There's hundreds of them. So real strong characteristic that these quite complex and difficult rules and restrictions that we put in place, that we try and use to control our eating, which obviously don't work. And then what runs alongside that is we have these rules, which puts us in gives us a black and white mindset that we're either on a diet because we're following these rules, or we're off a diet and we've blown it when we break one of those rules. All right. And quite often we have this idea that we have to be perfect for it to work, as in perfect to our made up rules. And as soon as we fail in that, we fail spectacularly and it's all over. So we're on it or we're off it. We really don't have a sense of what the in-between is, and we're certainly not able to navigate that. I think another key thing about dieting mindset is that weight loss tends to be the only goal. And, weight loss, when we lose weight from a diet, we don't even just, we lose fat, we lose muscle. And even the, muscle loss at our age is not a good thing. And it completely means that we don't think about any other benefits, because the single measurement of whether the program or the diet that we're on is successful is what the scales are telling us, and we're not looking at anything else at all. And in that instance as well, the scale can hold a lot of power, and our mood can be changed whether what the scales say. Have we gone up a day? Have we gone down? Have we gone up in the morning? Have we gone down in the morning? Losing weight can be a good thing, or it can trigger better compliance, but it can also trigger a thought of, okay, well, I can afford to go a bit easier today because I'm fine. Whereas they put weight on, and that can then create either, I can't eat today, or maybe it creates a binge type behavior where you go the other way because you've sort of blown it and there's no point, and you think that you've been out for one meal at the weekend and it's ruined your last 3 weeks of diet. So there's a real big impact that the scales can have on our day and our mood and how we feel about not just things as in the diet, but even ourselves. which can quite often lead to quite low self-esteem and sort of real issues. And you know, there's always this fear of gaining weight with a dieting mindset, because we're obviously trying to work to lose weight, and gaining weight is a sign that we are failing, and we don't like that. And because of this constant preoccupation with weight, you know, we then can create a very negative relationships with our body. You know, we can be scrutinizing it for, you know, becoming obsessed with the fatness or the size of our stomachs or the cellulite or all these things that we've all got. And it can become quite consuming, and that becomes quite negative, because you're always trying to think, oh, I need to be thinner, and therefore you're looking at what you've got thinking you hate it because it's not what you want it to be. And also we can be having quite unrealistic expectations about how our bodies will change. You know, we've got a particular body shape and size and fat distribution, and things like cellulite, there's not a lot we can do about. And we have ideals in our mind that if we only don't eat these things, we're going to look like, you know, whoever. Yasmin Le Bon was someone who I always thought was gorgeous, and she's probably about a foot taller than me and twice as long legs. So, but you know, we think that's perfect, and it's not, you know, it's not anything we could ever achieve if we had surgery. I mean, it's just completely out of reach. So we have this we can create this very unrealistic set of ideals, and constantly measuring ourselves up or comparing ourselves to those things which are just totally unrealistic and we're never going to achieve. So that you can see how that sets us up to be stuck in this very unhappy, unpleasant place. And then there's a preoccupation with food. Quite often it might be that we're hungry, or we're having to use willpower a lot to resist foods that are around us that we want. So there can be a real heavy preoccupation of what we're eating or what we're not eating, or what we want to eat. We can feel guilty for having anything. We can feel guilty for eating all the things on our banned list. We can feel guilty or uncomfortable when we're not in control, i.e. when people are handing out chocolates at work, or we're invited to someone's house for dinner. And those sorts of things can really play on our mind. And sometimes when we've been in a situation that's not in our control, or we've felt obliged to have birthday cake with someone, we then give ourselves a hard time the next day to try and make up for that. Okay, so it's a real emotional roller coaster. It's a really unpleasant place to be, and I think we probably all recognize that here. We're all singing off the same hymn sheet. And then this, because again of that black and white mindset, you know, when we are out of control of a situation, it's too much for us we can't cope with the pressure that brings, and we give up. But then we're not just having a relaxed day and relaxing our food rules, we've given up, we've ruined it, and we're really quite hard on ourselves. Okay, so that's how I see that dieting mindset, and how that sort of almost shaped our behavior and our thoughts about food and our bodies and what we should be working towards. And I think, I'm sure even after just saying that, there's probably a good reason why we should shift away from it. But I think the primary one is it actually doesn't work, you know. And you know, we come to dieting from a place of wanting to lose weight, and there can be lots of reasons to lose weight. It can be an aesthetic reason. It can be a lot to do with health. It can be about just being able to have some control or agency over our bodies as we're aging and going through the menopause process. There's lots of reasons, and it can be very, very personal. But the bottom line is that dieting approach that I've just talked about very, very rarely works. And if it does work, it tends to be for a temporary period of time. You know, we might manage to go on a diet for 3 months, 6 months, a year, but very rarely is it sustainable. And because it puts us under too much pressure, you know, it sets unrealistic expectations about what we can and can't do, and it just becomes very difficult to live with in the long term. And also, as I said, the single goal is weight loss. And again, I think we're all at an age where we are, you know, focused on more important benefits than just what a number on the scale says to us. Because even though, you know, within a dieting mindset where, let's say you did lose weight and it reduced your BMI, it could reduce your blood pressure, it could help with blood sugar control if you're diabetic. There's lots of genuine health benefits. It could help put less pressure through knees or hips if you had arthritis. It can help with inflammation. There can be so many things that can come with that. But in the dieting mindset, we're not really looking at any of those things, and we're not looking for them. So we might be experiencing some of those changes, but we're only looking at the scale and we're only looking to see if we look like Yasmin Le Bon yet. And of course we don't. So we're just sort of missing out on a huge focus area or area benefits that are genuinely really important to us, and have a bigger impact on the quality of our lives as we're older than what we physically look like. Okay. So if we then say, okay, well, that's dieting mindset, what's the shift that we're trying to make? The shift that we're trying to make is to be a lot more focused on that rounded picture of health, wellness, well-being, and being focused on the wider benefits that we get. Yes, it's always nice to hop on the scales and see that you're 1 or 2 pounds lighter, but it doesn't change your day, it doesn't change your life. And when I speak to people who've got more energy and able to focus more and feel better in control of the stress, or they've stopped snoring, or their bones and the joints ache less, I mean, they are life-changing things. So we want to be focusing on this wider set of benefits, and not just some of those things are, say blood pressure, you won't necessarily feel the benefit of blood pressure, but there's definitely, when you're well fed and well nourished and you've got good energy, there's a feeling that you have where you just feel so much better, which when you're on a super low calorie diet where you are losing weight, you don't feel great. So we want to be focusing on how important it is for us to feel good. And that then to sort of go back to what we have to then undo and the things that we have to change and the narrative that we have to work on within our own minds is that we have to start thinking about how we abandon this labeling or this idea of good or bad foods, because that takes us into that territory of those rules that we're setting. Equally, whether we've been good this week or bad this weekend, we've just had a weekend. We're trying to get out the idea that our behavior is somehow off. We're grown-ups, aren't we? We shouldn't have to think about that. So the shift then becomes about letting go of these rules that we've set up, recognizing that there's no such thing as good or bad foods. Food is food, and we're learning really how to find a way of eating to feel great and to look after ourselves from a physical and mental perspective through nutrition, because there's no question that good food, it has fuel for our bodies. It plays a really important role in repairing and regenerating our body and maintaining this sort of healthy balance, our energy systems, our brain, our mental function. The fuel that we put into ourselves has a huge impact on how well we operate as human beings. So that's the lens that we want to think about food for, is the more nutrients that we can give ourselves, the better we're going to feel, the better we're going to function, the healthier we're going to be. And really what starts to happen when you prioritize healthy food for all of those reasons, then weight loss can actually be almost like a byproduct and a natural effect of just getting your body into this nice sort of balanced state where your appetite and the calories that you're eating is naturally just lower, and you then start to get back into this healthier size or more natural size for your body, because quite often the weight we're carrying is, as a result of our stress and maybe eating in a different way because of how our kids or our partners have influenced us, or our lifestyles dictates we don't have a lot of time. So when we then just get back into those good habits and eat in a way that nourishes us, we then that weight can start to go. So that's subtle, but that's the way we're trying to think about this. So one part is actually acknowledging and buying into the fact that good nutrition is important and doing our best to give ourselves a really solid foundation on a day-to-day basis by feeding ourselves good meals for our breakfast, our lunch, our dinner. Yeah. And the other side is learning how to spot the triggers that then lead us into wanting to eat for different reasons. Okay. And how I like to think about this is, you've probably heard me say it, but I'm going to just put it in here, is almost putting your food in 2 buckets, 3 buckets even. And your first bucket is that you're going to be thinking about how usually when we talk about our diets, we're recognizing the fact that we either our meals aren't great, or we're not eating good quality meals, which we're changing with the sort of nutrition plan, or we know that we snack and we eat too many of the wrong things and we struggle with cravings or willpower, or however we want to describe it. So once we've taken care of all that nutrition for our main meals, then we're left with looking at the little bits in between. And we want to learn to understand why we're eating those things. And that is a process of self-discovery, learning what you struggle with. Are you eating because you're hungry? Do certain foods fill you up more than others? We start to lean into those things and look at them from a point of being curious. What's going on? And that might be how we spot that stress is a trigger for us, or if we're really busy at work and we don't get a chance to plan, we don't have any other options, so we just have to go to Tesco's and get a meal deal, or we're on the vending machine, or we know that if we've not brought our own lunch in and we can't stop for lunch, we're really susceptible to eating all the snacks that are in the staff room or wherever. Okay, so we're just learning about those things that trip us up. Okay. So, sorry, I just allergic all the time at this time of year. Must be the dust when the heating comes on. So once we have to lean into that struggle, we have to understand our triggers. And then we become more aware of those triggers, and we can find, different strategies that address them. So it might be we find better ways to cope with stress. We have better systems that mean that we're prepared when we know we're going to be busy. Our breakfast is on automatic pilot, so we don't have to think about it. And, or when we recognize that we start to feel bored, we think, well, what do we need to do? And it might be that we ring a friend, or we can find something, feel that we're maybe missing a hobby in our lives, for example. So that's a really important part of the process that's got nothing to do with diet and calories. It's about how we manage our lives without turning to food every time, something that we feel uncomfortable with. Okay. Another really important thing is the idea of inevitability, that there'll be a bad week. I mean, I know we're trying not to say bad and good week, but it just makes an easier explanation. So practically everyone who will do this program, or every client I'll work with, will start with super motivation, go out, do the plan, do the food, full of beans about it, really excited, and it might run really well for few weeks, but inevitably something will happen. So, work will get really stressed, kids will play up, you might have a row with someone. It could be the tiny thing, or it could be a really big dramatic change. And what tends to happen in the dieting mindset when that happens is we fall to pieces, and our plans fall to pieces, and we go back to our old habits because they're easier. And that's all really. They're easier and more familiar. And that's what we gravitate towards when we're struggling with whatever it is we're struggling with. And in the old mindset, we've ruined everything. We've gone back, and then we can be frustrated, and we can there's a bit of self-sabotage that goes on there, because we're so cross with ourselves, or we think, I've not been eating biscuits, but I've ruined it now, so I'm going to go and eat all the biscuits that I would have done in the last 3 weeks, and what have you. We're talking from experience here. So whereas now what we're doing with that mindset is, when we have a bad week, we're just recognizing that we're human, and that this is a very normal reaction, and it's a very normal pattern that us and other people will experience. Okay. And rather than that being something that completely derails us, we just pick ourselves back up, and we know that there's a set of circumstances that has created that response. It's not a personal failing of our character, or our lack of willpower, or our laziness. Quite often when we can't keep it together in a very stressful situation, we blame ourselves, as if we're in somehow failures, okay, which is just really not the case. So that's part of that shift, which is about being a lot kinder to yourself, and rather than being quick to blame yourself or give yourself a hard time when you've maybe just got a little bit of headspace from whatever drama's going on, that you can recognize that it's just a set of circumstances that lead to certain behaviors. And then you start to get control over it and get some perspective about it, rather than rush to blame yourself. So that's really what we have to do. We're trying to change that. And another part of it is to learn how to reintroduce foods that we might have previously banned. When I go through the journal of all the meals that you're all putting on. I mean, it's just fantastic. It's like just normal food, nice salads, healthy breakfasts, afternoon teas, a slice of cake, some yogurt, fruit. You know, it's just a fantastic mixture of everything. And there's you know, if we can find that balance for us, and well, firstly, we decide what that balance is for us, and then we find a way of being able to incorporate that into our diet, then it's okay, because we've not banned it. So it almost loses its appeal. So that's part of the process, is learning how to be eating in a way that's designed to support us from a health and well-being point of view, 80% of the time, 90% of the time. And the other time is learning to be able to be okay with being able to relax with a piece of chocolate at the end of the day, being able to have a cake, a slice of cake at your kid's birthday, you know, being able to go to someone's house and just eat what they put in front of you and be okay with that and just relax and enjoy the occasion. And then next morning, you just carry on as you were before. And when you're able to do that, you can still either lose weight or maintain weight wherever you are. Because if you think about it, in that type of model, you've cleaned up all that snacks and all those carb heavy things that will have your blood sugar going all over the place from the rest of your week. So those occasional indulgences make no difference, and they provide a lot of enjoyment in our lives. And that's really important that we find that. And, you know, I think food is a pleasure. Socializing, sharing meals with people is a pleasure. Just eating things like chocolate, if that's your thing, is a pleasure. We're allowed to have those sorts of things in our lives. We work so hard with everything else. We really deserve to have them. So it's important that we make space for them in a way that we accept that they're okay and there's no guilt. And once you get to that, you do start to understand how to, oh gosh, yeah, I can actually see this now. Doesn't this feel easier? So that's the goal. Now, I mean, I'll work with everyone on a one-to-one basis on these things, because, you know, everyone has a different mindset, or everyone sort of can sort of grasp these things at different speeds or in different ways. And it's always really helpful to talk it through with someone and get things out of your head when it happens, and just sort of get that distance and that perspective. And that's where the coaching works really well. But what I want to say is, whilst I've talked about what the ideal is in this little video here, it's not necessarily something that's an overnight shift in your brain. Okay. And I still haven't got to a point where it's 100% that's how I think, but I'm getting better at it, and it's more natural now, and it's more automatic. And those other ideals that I talked about at the beginning, or those other sort of thoughts, are fleeting, and I can quite quickly just get them out of my head when they pop up, you know, because they are always going to pop up, because we've been thinking about them and behaving like that for decades. You know, let's face it, I was 13 when I went on my first diet. I mean, it's ridiculous. I'm 53, so that's 40 years of being worried about what you eat. It's just crazy. So know that it takes time, and really all that you're doing when you know, work through this program is just becoming more aware of what you notice about yourself, what your own responses are, and just getting better in control of them and being able to spot them. And I think things that can be really helpful as part of that process, first and foremost, would be the planning. So the meal planning is just such a brilliant tool, because it's so simple. It's just a question of spending half an hour at a weekend before you, or whenever you do your shop, to plan your meals, plan your shopping list, and make sure you've got everything in, and have a plan for all your meals throughout the week. Or, you know, if you want to split it into 2 times a week, or you have like a list of 7 options that you pick from, so that at least you can go with what you feel like on the day. You're pre-deciding before you get to the end of the day when you're stressed or tired. Okay. And you are making it just much more automatic and so much easier for yourself to eat well when you plan like that. And that's a habit that you could just keep with forever, because once you get the feeling for how easy it makes your life, why would you stop? Okay. So that's a key part of that transition. The other one is, you know, through watching videos like this, and the other, you know, chatting with me about it, maybe posting on the group if that's your thing. rereading other stuff that's on the, on the chat, and maybe revisiting things like this is helpful, because you have to almost keep reminding yourself of what you're doing and what the changes are and what the old way of doing things is and what we're trying to change, because you're just almost rehearsing it, if you like. It's maybe a little bit when you were at school and you learn a language, you have to play over that new narrative over and over again, one way or another, for it to sort of start to sink into your brain, and also to catch yourself when you're in old behaviors and just observe it and think, oh, right, oh, that's interesting. I feel really guilty about having that chocolate now, but actually I've had a great week and that's not going to make any difference. So I can choose not to feel bad about it and move on. And that's very typical of the little sort of conversation I have. Oh, I ate too much yesterday. Oh, well, okay, today's a new day. Finish. That's the end. So that's very much how, that idea of just reminding yourself of the process can really help. Another thing that I'm a big fan of is journaling. That's been so useful to me over the years. And I think I've said this recently, but probably how I was able to write my book in a way, and some of the techniques that I put in my book about how to reset yourself for the next day were based on me just reflecting on what my own triggers were, what helped, why I struggled to get out of a funk, how I did get out of them, because quite often we can react but not understand why or how we're reacting. We can struggle to get out of a funk, but we don't know why. We can suddenly find the motivation from somewhere, don't know why. Whereas the journaling helps to sort of almost pick through that and find the patterns and I would just be writing about a situation that I found myself in and almost trying to journal through it or relive it. And then I'll notice what's happening and what's happened and how it's then suddenly impacted my behavior. And the journaling can be useful either just to learn about your own triggers, or it can even be just to observe your own reactions, or just remind yourself of what your goals are and what you're trying to change about your attitude, now. Okay. So it is just about whatever technique you can use to be aware of the mindset that, your default setting, if you like, seeing it when it happens and being able to work to shift it. Other things that can work really well for that are things like meditation or mindfulness, because it's just both of those things just put you in almost the present of what's happening and allow you to be able to observe what's happening rather than just be caught up in the emotion of it and running away with it. And that's all that this process demands, is that you can spot yourself when you're going into your old automatic habits and thinking. And the key thing is being kind to yourself, and I think you can read that type of being kind to yourself and you just can roll your eyes a bit sometimes, or think that it's quite trite, or, it's a bit of a wussy thing, I don't know, but actually it's what you need, because I think women we drive ourselves really hard. We hold ourselves to really high standards. As soon as something is tough and that we have to deal with, and quite often that situation is not of our doing, we're just sort of left to pick up the pieces and we struggle. We blame ourselves. I hear it so often. We give ourselves such a hard time. Whereas if we actually just take the pressure off a little bit, that can go a long way to just making things, thinking, yeah, I'm just a human being. This is going to drive me nuts. I am struggling, and being a little bit kind to yourself. And all that does, I find, is gives yourself a little bit of space and allows you to pull back and suddenly feeling like you're the person responsible for everything, and knowing that actually you don't have to be. And suddenly your brain just goes, and you're not on high alert anymore. You just can okay, let's forget it. And then the last thing is just recognizing that it takes time and being patient. And I'm smiling about that because I'm probably the least patient person I know. And it's been a bit of a battle, I would say, for me to learn how to be patient. I'm sure it is, I'm sure you relate to that as well. But in a way, I've actually quite enjoyed that. I've enjoyed that opportunity to just say, and it's another way of taking the pressure off. Okay, I don't have to do this overnight. It doesn't have to be an instant change. I've got all the time in the world. And it just feels, the whole thing when you start to have that mindset is just, you do feel the weight coming off. Okay, because you just think, all these things that I've been trying to do all my life, I don't need to do them anymore. And suddenly your life feels so much easier. And that's a really lovely feeling. And you do get quite a lot of peace from that. So hope that's helpful. I hope that gives you a little bit of food for thought, and allows you just to sort of think about that process and how you're going to just work through it yourself. As always, anytime that things come up for you where you struggle, then I'm always happy to have an extra chat. I know we sort of formally in the app, it's set up to remind you to have a call with me once a month, but I'm always happy to have a conversation with anyone when they feel like they've had a bit of a tough week and they need a bit of a reset or a bit of a hand to talk things through and just see it from a different perspective. So yes, always book those calls in with me. Right then, taking plenty of your time now. Hopefully you've enjoyed that, and I'll see you on the next one. All right, bye now.